Hello and welcome to another episode of the Moaning Show. I am HCD01. In this particular episode, I'd like to talk to you about a potentially controversial subject, which is all about censorship. In 1948, George Orwell wrote a book called 1984 with regards to the ongoing censorship and lessening of freedom that took place by the governments of the world at that time. It set in the book, potentially set in our terms in the next, say, 10 to 15 years or so. Now, I will come out and say this immediately. We all need censorship. Now, you may be surprised to hear me say that, but we all also don't need censorship. Censorship is a policy or a term and condition, so to speak, that is brought forward by the times, by the feelings of those in power at the time, be they governments, be they feelings, thoughts and opinions. For instance, the t-shirt I'm wearing is of a wrestler, possibly the second most well-known wrestler of all time, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, the Austin 316 is a slogan he used to use, but the majority of the time he used to go round after he'd win a match, or even before a match most of the time, and basically do this. Now, in this day and age, that is completely and totally unacceptable in terms of the current censorship climate, so to speak. You can't speak your mind, you can't say what you want, which is basically the same thing, and you certainly cannot basically do what you want to do. Now, I'm not saying that you've never been able to do what you want to do, because times have changed, how people see and believe what you are doing in a certain aspect of society. And that's what censorship is all about. It's trying to keep those individuals that could be explained to hardened material in terms of, like, swearing, gruesome images, or images inappropriate for some. And censorship is there to stop those individuals that shouldn't be seeing things or hearing things to a certain degree from seeing or hearing those things. But here's my point. Shouldn't it be up to the individual about what we want to fucking hear or see or do, not some governmental organisation? Because the future described in George Orwell's book 1984 is of complete and total non-freedom. I've not personally read the book, but I know enough about it to say that we're heading there. You see things on the internet all the time about, sign this petition if you think that censorship should be held back, or just say bollocks to censorship or fuck you to censorship. And on one hand, yes, personal freedom should be there. There have been two major global conflicts. We've just celebrated the anniversary of D-Day, for fuck's sake. Those individuals, those soldiers, those men and women of our fighting armed forces, the Allied armed forces, died for the freedoms that we enjoy today. And I have utmost respect for them and their families. But what the fuck did they die for if our individual freedoms are getting censored? the swearing that I'm doing in these moaning shows is the pinnacle of the so-called freedoms that we have, that you and I have, every single time we open our mouths. And yet we're being thrust into a corner by governmental organisations and governments themselves. You know, we've been put into that 1984-esque future because they think that we need censoring. You know, every swear word will be bleeped out, every image will be blurred or whatever. Shouldn't that be up to us to fucking decide? What do you think? You know, if you're a responsible parent, you gradually let your children like go through each individual stage of lessening their censorship, so to speak. Every movie, ever since I can personally remember, has been rated by the British Board of Film Classification, the BBFC, and has ratings currently of UC, Universal specifically for children, you know, toddlers, things like that, Universal, U, PG. PG stands for parental guidance. It's all to do with if you yourself as a parent believe that this movie is okay to see, then you can let your children see it. 12, which is movies for ages 12 and upwards, 15, and 18, which is the highest rated movie in terms of age, censorship, things like that. Now, I will freely admit I learnt foul language rather early on by watching The Crystal Maze with Richard O'Brien and then Edward Tudor Pole. I learnt it from my father, who would exclaim his utmost fucking anger about the contestants on the show when they couldn't figure out what to do, and the solution was staring them blank in the face. You know what I mean? So he'd be like, "You fucking idiot, you stupid fucking bastard, it's right there next to you, open your fucking eyes," you know, things like that. And I was entertained first and foremost, but when I eventually you know, did learn to swear and things like that, I was opened up to the world of, not, I wouldn't say adult movies, but movies with swearing, you know, guns and explosions and death and all that sort of stuff. I was watching all of that before I was 10. And it's not because my dad didn't love me or my parents didn't love me, you know. It's like I was exposed to those, you know, foul language, and, you know, it's not just as if I'm going to report my dad for not keeping me in the proper age bracket, because that's not how life works. You're given things, or you're shown things at a certain age, and it's up to your parents to decide what is good for you to see or what is bad for you to see. And that is what growing up is all about. Not that I've bloody finished it myself, quite frankly, but it's all to do with what you perceive is acceptable and unacceptable. And censorship pushes us back into that fold, into that little corner where we're all little tiny bunny rabbits, like these governmental organisations would have us believe. And it's all to do with, you know, not being a fucking dickhead. I distinctly remember after every episode of one of my favourite shows growing up that a certain individual called Mr. Motivator, who was a fitness personality. Yes, I do know what fitness is all about, despite the fucking size of me. But he would come on the screen and say, "Don't do what you've seen in the show. You know, they're highly trained individuals. Make sure you don't do what you saw in the show, like karate kicks and punches and all that sort of shit." And that leads me to believe that A, people need telling, because of B, someone actually went out and fucking did it. You know, you see all sorts of like warnings before every wrestling event or something like that that says, "Don't do backyard wrestling, it might injure you, or it will injure you." Fuck off. It's up to us what we want to do, you know. It's like, oh, you just got to sit in a box and not hear anything and not be offended. And that's another fucking thing that gets up my nose. People who are easily offended. Swivel on this. In fact, swivel on this too. Because you're the reason that these fucking policies and procedures are brought in by these organisations and governments. And, you know, it's like, oh, I'm offended by that. Yeah, well, I'm offended by you being offended. Fuck off. Grow up. Grow some. You know what I mean? And, you know, so what if something's offensive to somebody else? If it's not particularly hurting you in a physical manner, yeah, it might do you some damage in the mental sense, but if it's not gruesome, if it's not nudity, if it's not swearing, if it's not... I mean, you could be offended by someone not shaving, for example, like myself. Or someone wearing a pair of glasses with a yellow tint, like myself. You know, grow the fuck up. Oh, I'm offended by you having meat and pulses, or I'm offended by it. See, vegans, I'm not trying to have a go at an individual. Vegetarians, or people who only eat meat, or whatever. You know, these people are offended by what you're eating. You know, and they try and influence other people, or people they're romantically linked with, to do the same thing. If, heaven forbid, I end up going out with a vegan, you know, in later life, and they say, oh, well, you shouldn't eat this, you shouldn't have bread, you know, it's all shitty, and, you know, it's all, oh, well, you shouldn't be drinking milk. Fuck you! If I like a girl and she says she's a vegan, that's it, I'm saying bye-bye, bitch. I shall eat and drink what I fucking want, within reason, thanks to my recent medical history, but more on that another time, in another Moaning Show. But censorship is needed and it's not needed. It's needed for those absolute fucking dregs of humanity that don't know their arse from their elbow, because they need they're the ones that need the help the most, if you see what I mean. And it's also not needed because it should be up to the individual who's like saying this, saying that. It's like, yeah, okay, I know for a fact that an 18 movie might contain violence, it might contain drug use, it might contain nudity, it might contain, you know, explosions and coarse language and things like that. Yeah, alright, thanks for the warning. In the UK, where this video is being made, there's something called the watershed. The watershed starts at 9 PM every single night. And I do believe in some aspects of television and things like that, that if you show a movie with more adult themes, is that I think it's 10 o'clock or maybe 9:30. Maybe even 8:30, half an hour earlier. But if it's a movie, every single movie has to have a disclaimer, like this video will have underneath the video title, where it says show more, or click for show more. And in this video it will say, this video contains foul language. Fuck, shit, bollocks, cunt, assholes, shit, wank, you know. Now, I feel like I have to put that because of what these videos contain. And it's annoying. I shouldn't have to put that. This is what our grandfathers and great-grandfathers and ancestors fought for. Freedom. To say, do what you want within laws and reasoning. And the more censorship stops us doing said things and throws us into a place where we don't want to be, where we're not allowed to say what we feel or what we think. Because there's something in 1984, the novel by George Orwell, called Doublespeak, where you say something and it means something like, oh, well, you're saying it's good and it's bad, or you're saying it's bad and it's actually good, or whatever. And the term Big Brother like the reality TV show that existed in 2000, I think last year, where it finished, or it might finish this year. Heaven knows it'll still fucking carry on. But that's where it comes from. Big Brother is watching you. So in other words, every little thing that someone did was being watched. And it's exactly the same for this so-called nanny state. You know, we're being pushed into doing things or saying things that we don't really want to say, or, oh, I better not say that because it might offend someone, or, you know, you're censored from even thinking what you truly want to think. It's like, oh, well, that offends me, or that person's like that offends me. Say like if you've got tattoos on your face, you know, it's like that would censor that sort of individual freedom. And censorship is slowly but surely creeping in, and it's all, you know, it all started, in my opinion, when Jonathan Ross and Russell Brand picked on Andrew Sachs's granddaughter a few years back on the radio, and they were reprimanded. They were either fired or they moved channels from BBC to ITV, things like that. It's why the Jonathan Ross show is now on ITV, basically. They've got more lenient policies when it comes to that sort of shit. But that's what I'm trying to get at. You should allow us the freedom and the, you know, right, quite frankly, that our heroes of world wars past, you know, and wars past, that fought for our rights and freedoms. It's not fair to say, oh, you're not allowed to do this because it's blah, 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 blah. Fuck off. You meet one of these people that make these decisions, you want to kick them in the bollocks. Punch them in the face, you know. It's like, excuse me, what is your right to tell me that I don't have the right to say and think what I want to think, that I want to say? But on the other hand, you know, you get these absolute stupid bellends in the world, you know, that you're thinking, well, yeah, they might need a bit of help, but does that have to apply to everyone? It's a load of shit. If censorship truly and utterly takes a hold, the Moaning Show won't exist. And right, it barely exists as it is, but it's the principle. We've just celebrated the anniversary of D-Day, for fuck's sake, the Normandy landings. And what did they die for? There's a picture on social media with a statue of a war hero, you know, in full battle dress and a helmet, with kids looking up to it like that, you know, and it says, oh, sorry kids, looks like we died for fuck all. It's terrible. It is absolutely terrible. So that's about it for this edition of the Moaning Show. I hope I haven't offended anybody, and if I have, fuck off. And as I said in the last edition, and I will say, you know, leading up to the grand old episode 50, please leave your thoughts, comments and suggestions in the dialogue box underneath this video, if you can, please, about what you would like to see mentioned in episode 50. I've got one suggestion already from a viewer, thank you very much for that. But I'd like to make episode 50 a viewer's suggestion shout out thing only. And if I have to come up with like little bits here and there, then so be it. But I would like episode 50 to be a viewer suggestion episode. So anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you see you next time for more moaning. See you then.